Hello everybody and welcome to the Spokal webinar, Learn How I Write Blog Posts That Get Read by Thousands. My name is Sarah Burke and I'm the content writer and marketer at Spokal, and I'm going to be your presenter today. So I just want to go over a few housekeeping details first. So the first thing is on your screen you'll see that I have a PowerPoint presentation, and for you guys to see that in full screen I have to full screen it, and I don't have a facilitator with me today. So that means I won't see any questions that you have as I go through the presentation. There is a 5-minute Q&A at the end, and I'll try to address any questions you have there. But just to let you know, I'm not ignoring you as we go through this. I'm just not able to see your questions until the end, and I don't have a facilitator to help me out. So just bear with me with that. So just scribble down any questions you have while we're going through, or you can write them in the chat box and I'll go back and I'll look at them later on at the end of the webinar. The second thing is that we are recording this webinar, so you will get a replay link a few hours afterwards. So you can share that with friends, or you can look over it again if there's something that you found was particularly interesting and you wanted to look through again. Feel free to do that. And just to let you guys know that a lot of what I'm communicating today is going to be verbal. So if you want to grab a pen and paper to kind of scribble a few notes down, feel free to do that now. And that's all the housekeeping. So let's get right into it. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. I've broken the writing process, or I guess the blogging process, up into 4 sections. And that's get in the know, the writing process, the actual writing process, the important bit, the social, and more social, and organization. Now, they're all really important. They all kind of work together. I've just broken it down to 4 sections so that I can kind of go through the steps with you guys, but these aren't step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. These are just broken up into sections for you to easily understand it, but all of these kind of work together as you're practicing and getting more accustomed to blogging. All of these elements work together, but they're just broken down today into 4 sections for you guys. So the first section's get in the know. So it's knowing your audience, knowing your allies, and knowing your competition. So knowing your audience is obviously really, really important. But the problem with telling people that you need to know your audience is that everyone just assumes that we're talking about demographical details. But it's more than that. It's about getting to know them like they're almost your friend. So really getting to learning how to listen to what they're saying, and not just in reference to your industry, but in general. When you do this, you understand them and then you can empathize with them. So the idea is that you listen to them, you understand what they're saying, and then you empathize. So you make some connection with them where you almost feel what they're feeling. And having this level of connection with your audience means that your writing will always be compassionate towards them. So you won't inadvertently say the wrong thing or miss the point or not help them where they need help. So the first thing that I have really found that helped me get a lot of people reading my blog posts was really understanding my audience from this perspective, really just looking at them as people and empathizing with their struggles, their successes, and this just really informs how you write your content. So I would go into forums, go into communities, talk with people, discuss things with people. For me, I write for small businesses, so I've met up with small business owners. I've spoken with them about what the issues they came in contact with were, what they need, and that just really informed my writing and really got people interested. The second group of people you need to learn to get to know and even spot is your allies. This is kind of a mix between people who are super just on your side, like they're really rooting for you, and influencers. So I don't like to use influencers because I don't think all your allies have to be influencers. I think some of them are just really interested in what you're doing, but a lot of them are going to be influencers as well. They're that kind of personality type that when they suggest when they suggest a product or a business, people listen to them because they're very, very outspoken. But not all of them are always influencers. So that's kind of important in terms of grouping them as allies rather than influencers. So I like to think of these people as, I like to think of them as the kind of customers in a small shop. So I'm the shopkeeper and these people come into my shop and I kind of talk to them all the time and we really get along. And then they go back out and they say, oh, well, we love Sarah. She's great. Like, you have to go to her store. And that keeps my little small business alive, just kind of getting along with these allies, getting along with these influencers and just getting, and them spreading the word. So I like to think of it like that, if that helps you guys. So why would you get to know these allies or influencers or a mix of both? Well, it's word of mouth advertising. Like I just said, they go back out and they say, oh, I really like what Sarah's doing, et cetera, et cetera. You guys need to go back. Word of mouth advertising is probably one of the most powerful things you can harness as a small business or a startup or a marketer or a writer, anything that you're doing for kind of for yourself. It's word of mouth. You need to get people talking about you, and knowing your allies and making sure that you spend time with them and spend time talking to them and listening and communicating and helping them out really gets that word of mouth going. These allies usually leave a lot of comments on your blogs as well, which is fantastic. And they're very vocal, and generally, because they're allies, they're not particularly influencers all the time. So they're not these people that you are looking for a backlink from necessarily, but they're very, very vocal. So they speak for a larger audience. So if they're having a problem and they kind of come to you and they vocalize it, a lot of time that issue can resonate with the rest of your larger audience that might not say anything specifically to you. So these allies are great kind of like go-between for your general audience and you. And lastly, but not leastly, you can ask them for favors. So they're great for if you're doing a survey, you send them a link and then they'll send their friends a link, et cetera, et cetera. So they're a good segue again. So with your allies, because they're part of the general audience, sometimes they're kind of hard to recognize. But there are a few ways that kind of will make them stand out from the rest. So the first is they'll always leave comments on your posts. Sometimes these are influencers and, you know, they're trying to encourage you to leave comments on their posts as well, which is fine. That's great. Definitely make that connection. I love leaving comments on posts, and I'll get back to that later. But yeah, so sometimes they'll leave comments on your posts a lot. So they're always checking in with your blog. They have you in their feeds, and they see Spokal or they see your blog and they click into it and they love coming in and seeing what you've written. So they're always leaving comments and they're great. They'll also try to connect you with you in an unconventional way. This isn't always necessarily what will happen, but I've seen this happen with a few of my allies or people I would consider allies, and they try to connect me kind of not an unprofessional way, but not the standard way. So usually people will try to connect with me through email, Twitter. Yeah, usually just email and Twitter. But every so often I'll get a direct message on Twitter, or I will get, say, a message on my LinkedIn or even Facebook. And they kind of just open up and they'll just kind of talk to you like a person, like outside of work, and they just want to chat. So it's kind of unconventional the way they do it. And it kind of humanizes them, and you see that they're trying to connect with you on a different level. And then sometimes those allies will also take your advice and they'll come back and tell you the results. So they're really, really interconnected with what you're saying, and you're really helping them. So they're excited to tell you, oh, you did this, I took that on board, look what I did, and create that relationship. So that's really, really exciting when that happens. And it's a really good indicator that that person is not just part of your general audience, but really connected with your content. The third group of people you'll want to get to know is your competition. Dun, dun, dun. So if you're in Spokal, if you're using the Spokal platform, all you have to do is go to the CNC tab, the Convince and Convert tab, and you just get you can search, you can put in an organization that's your competitor, and then you can go through their tweets and you can look through negative and positive tweets and see kind of what the buzz is about your competitor. And you can also do some extra research by checking out their other social media profiles too. So especially if they're on a platform that you're not using, see how they're using it. And if you should be on it too. So if they're getting a lot of success on it, you don't want them dominating a platform without you to give them a run for their money. So get onto that platform, see what they're doing. Is it working? Yeah, if it isn't, don't waste your time. So obviously, you can do this if you don't have Spokal as well. You just go through your competitors' tweets and you can look at what they're doing wrong, what people are tweeting or posting in terms of complaints. So are people kind of like giving out a lot? So one of the things that I noticed about one of our competitors was that a lot of people had tweeted to them that they were getting too many emails. And then they were unsubscribing because it was just too much. So I took that and I went and I wrote a blog on why people are unsubscribing to your emails. So the idea is I took something that my competitor was getting a lot of negative press for, and I wrote about it in the hopes that any of their audience might see that we are aware of this issue, and we are also not going to do that. Well, as much as possible, we are not going to over email you or whatever the other things were that people unsubscribe to your email list. I'm not going to go through them all now. The positives, so what are they doing right? What content is being shared and liked a lot? Another example I have for the positive is that I saw that another competitor of ours had written about marketing on Reddit, which is for me next to impossible. I am quite an active Redditor, so I knew that Reddit and marketing didn't go very hand in hand. So I took that positive article and I wrote a spin on it just recently, actually, yesterday, about how you might not necessarily be able to market on Reddit, and a lot of the content that tells you you can, you need to take with a pinch of salt, but this is what you can learn from Reddit. So I took kind of a positive and well shared piece of content and I kind of made it my own and put a different spin on it and made it interesting and relevant to my small business owners, my audience, because I don't want them trying to waste their time on Reddit, because it is quite a difficult platform to market on. Not impossible, but difficult. So yeah. Okay, so that's the section one. That's getting in the know. Now we're going to move on to the writing process. I'm going to talk about kind of fearlessly brainstorming, finding your writing style and acting as an editor, and a few other things as well. Obviously, these are just a little taster. So this is a very, very simplified writing process. I used to teach. I don't know if any of you follow the blog religiously, but I wrote a blog recently on the similarities between teaching and marketing, and I used to teach for a few years, and I used to teach in English, and this was the writing process I used to give the students, and it's super basic, but it really gives you, I still use it kind of just, obviously it's more complicated than this when you actually go into it, but I still use this to the day, and it just gives me a great little bit of structure every time I go to do the writing process, because otherwise you feel like you're just putting pen to paper and scribbling stuff down. But if you know that you are actually going through a process, it makes things a lot easier for you to digest. So pre-writing, we did a lot of research when I was talking about getting to know your audience and your allies and your competitors. That's all research. Like I said, with the competitors, I came up with a few blog posts, but just by looking at their negative and positive tweets. So that is definitely research. But there are also keyword research, and this is really important. Now, I wouldn't get too bogged down with SEO right now. If you're on Spokal, you'll see that they have a really good kind of can't think of the word, SEO management tool, the kind of like real-time SEO management. And as you type, you kind of change the SEO around so that it is looking good for the search engines. And that's great. And it means that you don't spend a lot of time on it. If you're not on Spokal, there's a few very, very basic SEO blogs. There's one on Spokal that's, I literally just go through the absolute basics of what you need to know. And once you get those, don't spend just too much time on it. It is something that you'll start to get really good at as you go. So I just don't kind of dwell on it too much. Do try, but don't dwell, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So keyword research is really, really important part of SEO. So this is the part that I would suggest dwelling a little bit on. And this is, on Spokal, as you can see, we set up a keyword campaign. And every keyword is scored on Spokal. And the idea is that you find keywords that have high traffic, but low competition. So that means that lots of people are looking for this content, but no content is available, or not a lot of content is available. So that is your golden egg. That's exactly what you want. Down here, you'll see a red, and that just means, for this one, it means that there's high traffic and there's low competition. Oh, I think there might actually be low traffic. This is kind of a general signifier. So obviously there's very low traffic, and that's why it's so small. And then, as you can see here, there is high traffic, but there's high competition. So that just means a lot of people are searching for it, but there's a lot of content available. So that's affordable SEO services, which is super general. And I can see why that would be getting both high traffic and high competition. So if you wanted to write about affordable SEO services, make it more specific. Affordable SEO services in Chicago, London, Vancouver, wherever. That will get you a green. If you're not on Spokal, that's fine. There are ways to do keyword research outside of Spokal, obviously. Google AdWords seems to be the really popular one. And yeah, I would agree as well. It kind of gives you that the competition rating. So you can see it down here. Medium, high, blah, blah, blah. And the keywords there. So it gives you a general feeling of what is working well and what you should be blogging about. But I wouldn't just leave it at that, because sometimes I feel like, especially with long tail keywords, that there might be actually a lot of content out there. So I'd like to go to BuzzSumo and actually write my long tail keyword in and see exactly. And sorry, if you don't know what a long tail keyword is, it just means that it's a term. So it's not just SEO, it's affordable SEO services in Vancouver. So it's a longer term. So I'll put that kind of into BuzzSumo and see what content is available and see how popular it's getting. So how to get people to read your blog, 3 ways to get people to read your blog. And then you'll see how popular, how many shares it's getting. So if you're writing about content marketing and you see that there are a ton of blogs written on content marketing and they're getting a lot of shares and super popular, you know to take that and make it different. You don't want to just regurgitate other people's content. It's not going to do you any favors. And which is super handy is that you can actually do it by 24 hours past week, past month, past 6 months, and then past year. So you can kind of think long term if it's like an evergreen piece of content that you think has been posted about a lot in the past year or in the past. If it's something more recent, more timely, you can kind of just look at the more recent times. So fearlessly brainstorming. So when I was teaching, I always used to get the kids to brainstorm. But what I noticed is that the brainstorms would come out really super neat and they weren't that effective. They weren't making connections that I know kids could make, right? So I realized that I don't need to get them to brainstorm. I need to get them to fearlessly brainstorm. So that is the difference. It's being able to take a white piece of paper and just scribble on it, just verbal diarrhea all over it. So that is what you see in front of you. I don't normally draw a Halloween pumpkin on it. That's just me drawing, doodling. But as you can see, it's very, very messy. It's just writing random stuff that's related to the center keyword. And it's just basically me taking ideas in my head that are quite difficult to organize when they're in your head and putting it down on a piece of paper. Excuse me. Okay. So this took me 10 minutes. Now, I wouldn't suggest 10 minutes as a time limit for you. If you don't brainstorm a lot, I would suggest a little bit more. In fact, I'd suggest at least 15 minutes. So this is what the pre-writing fearless brainstorming looks like. So set yourself a time limit of 15 to 30 minutes and set a timer, and then you stick to it. You'll just have a paper and pen. You'll close the curtains. Your phone is off unless obviously you need it for the timer, but you're not distracted by anything. It's very, very quiet room, and all you have is your pen and paper. I try to do it on paper. I know that some people are thinking, oh, I'll just do it on my laptop, but I actually think paper is better because, you know, computers have so many distractions on them. And if I'm just in a closed room by myself, I just find that all I'm thinking about is the task at hand. So I find it really, really peaceful way to brainstorm and to not feel insecure as well. Like, so the idea is that you're trying to fearlessly brainstorm and not kind of think of anyone looking at what you're doing or judging what you're doing. And then while you're writing, just don't be perfect. Don't even try to be perfect. Literally just take what's in your mind and put it on the paper. Once your 15-30 minutes is over, you stop. And that's it. Now, before you start, if you do want to do a bit of research, if you're writing something that you're not super knowledgeable about, go ahead and do research before you start this. That's fine, but don't do research as you're doing it. This is all you making connections in your brain with the information that you have. And of course, write like no one's watching, because they're not. The idea is that, especially when you're writing on a piece of paper, you can just take that piece of paper, rip it up, and it's gone for good, right? Don't be insecure about doing it. You'll get some really, really, really awesome ideas the less you think of other people as you brainstorm. Oh, sorry. Okay. So stage 2, actually writing. Not pre-writing, writing. So to write well is to think clearly. That's why it's so hard. I love this quote because it's exactly why I get people to brainstorm, because thinking clearly is hard. Writing is hard because it's thinking clearly. And that's why you need to brainstorm and get that down on a piece of paper. It'll help you think clearly. It's one of the steps to thinking clearly, and it's one of the steps to writing well. So here was my brainstorm, and this is how I make it into something that's actually going to be super productive for me. So I take the best ideas from my brainstorm and I put it into a list. This list will act as a guiding post for me. They will act as subheadings inside my blog. So what happens, and what happened with this blog that I was writing, was how to create Halloween content. Contains all these things. Where do I start? What am I going to do? I don't know. However, if I say Halloween content, and then I go to the first subheading that I have, user-generated content. Okay, let's find some user-generated Halloween content, and let's talk about that. There we go. And I do the same for listicles. I do the same for the giveaways and the video and the stories. I just go through each of them and I just discuss that specific element to the general that's related to the general blog. So it just breaks it down to a digestible amount of work for you, but it also makes a lot more sense for when people are reading it. So again, we're going back to the thinking clearly thing. We are trying to think clearly, and this is the process of doing so. So again, your first draft, just like your brainstorm, is going to be word vomit. Everybody says this. But there's a way for your first draft not to be so chaotic, and that is your first draft with headings equals organized word vomit. Yay! So there is a way to kind of control this process. It isn't something that you have to completely live with. Okay, so the perfect title. So on average, 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. So when you have written your headline, you've spent 80 cents out of your dollars. That's 80% of what you've put into it. But we only spend a fraction of our time creating our headings. It's just so unfortunate because if we don't create really good titles, no one's going to read our really good content. So um, to get people to read my blog posts, I spend a lot of time creating titles and getting good at creating titles. So always kind of spending a lot of time and figuring out what works and what doesn't and testing titles and seeing, yeah, what kind of resonates with people. So title, 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 title. I'm not going to go through each of them, but the idea is that you write your titles over and over and over and over again. I really like Upworthy's suggestion of 25 titles. You might have seen that piece of content going around. I thought it was a great idea. I've been doing something similar. I think I was doing 30 titles before when I saw this 25 titles. I started doing 25, and sometimes I do 20, depending on how easy I'm finding writing the title, really. But generally, 20 is minimum. And so I was writing a guest post yesterday, actually, and I realized when I was doing it that it probably been a good idea to show you what writing those 25 titles looks like. So this is me just scribbling again. This is very unself-conscious. Like, I don't really mind people seeing it. But at the same time, this is just a little, well, a big enough sketch pad that I bought in a dollar store, and I always use it for the same thing, and it's just brainstorming. It's just scribbling down ideas, and it's just, yeah, it's just to play around with, really, and not be self-conscious. So as you can see, I think on that page I got 17, and I have finished on the other side. And then I chose my 10th one. And I actually went through this sketchpad recently to see where I usually find my titles, and they are usually within the top 15. That doesn't mean I don't write 25 titles, but usually I think I have it here. Yeah, the longest down the list that I've ever found a title was 15, and this one I found at 10. But you know what? People only spend like 5 minutes creating titles, and they maybe create 3. So as you can see, I found my title at 10. So it really does make a difference if you write titles over and over again, and give yourself a good hour, half an hour, depending on how good you are at those. I'm not very good at them, so I give myself quite a lot of time to do them. But and it's just because I'm kind of picky with them, and you should be really picky. Like I said, it's 80% of your dollar spent, so, or 80 cents on your dollar spent, so you probably should be quite a perfectionist when it comes to it, or as perfectionist as you could, as you reasonably can be. Okay, so writing style. Now this is something you kind of just develop as you go. It's something that you just get with practice. If you read a lot, that's great. You probably have a writing style already. I've been a bookworm since I was very young, so it was kind of a culmination of reading a lot and writing a lot throughout the years that I came up with a writing style that was very much my personality, but something that people found easy to read as well. And so looking at your favorite blogs and your newspapers and magazines, and just taking note of what you like about an author's writing is a really good way to kind of hone in your style. So even if you do have a good writing style, you might want to be a little more accessible. Maybe you want to be a little bit more academic or professional or humorous or sarcastic or whatever it is. If you want to kind of hone in your style a little bit, do read these kind of blogs and newspapers and look at what people are doing and how people are writing, because it really does help. Even if you're writing academically, though, I would just let you know that when you're blog writing, don't be afraid to be funny, and don't afraid to take yourself lightly. It's probably the best thing I ever learned while teaching, is to not take yourself too seriously. Because the thing is, you break down barriers when you're funny. You break down kind of the power dynamics. I'm the author, I'm the expert, and you are listening to me. That's not a really nice power dynamic to be in. So if you're funny and you're kind of just talking and you're just cracking a few jokes, it's much easier for people to read and kind of like you and make the piece likable too. So I would also suggest being colloquial, so writing as if you're talking to an old friend, very, very conversationally. In saying that, don't sacrifice style for good spelling or grammar or syntax. If you're doing it on purpose, if you're, misspelling something because it's like OMG in caps or something because it's so purposely humorous, it's fine. But do spell checks and do be careful of your grammar and syntax. But relax as well, if that's possible. So the third stage of writing is revision. So there's a lot of revision going on. Obviously you've done your first draft. Your second draft it's kind of a mix of just like putting it all together and making it seem less like word vomit. So it's rephrasing sentences so they sound a little bit more natural. It's if you have any like data or facts or information in general, copy and paste it. You put it into your own words and you'll get a hyperlink for it. Clear up your spelling and grammar. And then if you have subheadings, you kind of change those subheadings. Like UGC isn't a very good subheading, so I might say user-generated Halloween content instead, and change the subheading so that they're more informative and more interesting. And this is just generally where the organization happens, where the cleanup starts. Third draft, you add some more links, you add extra information to support points. So especially if you're talking about, say, user-generated content, and I might say, oh, well, I'm not just going to talk about it. I need to go get an example of it. So I'll go look for an example, and that's when I'll copy and paste that in and talk about the example. So copy and paste a photo in or something, not just an entire example. And that's when I number lists and bullet points and just kind of make it a little bit more easy to digest and not such a huge wall of text. And the fourth draft, I read through, I catch the last little bit of errors. I do my final spell check on it. And then finally, publication. It's been approved. We're all good. I copy and paste all the work from my Word document into a blogging platform. And that's when I add the photos. Don't forget to play around with alignment with photos. There's nothing worse than going into a blog and all the photos are centered or right, or there's just one photo. Use a good few images. I like to use about one for every 150 words, which is quite a lot. But it's makes it a lot more interesting. And then I like to right align and left align center sometimes and just kind of play with it because the eye gets really bored as it reads. And especially since a lot of us skim what we're reading, you want to make it a little bit more interesting by adding different alignments to photos. And then don't forget to preview the post. And if you're scheduling it, take into account time zone differences. So if you're scheduling it for 9 a.m. And a lot of your audience is in I don't know, Australia, so it'll be midnight. I'm totally messing with the time zones there, but you know what I mean. You'll obviously want to schedule it so that it's not maybe 9 a.m. in Australia rather than here and things like that. And then afterwards, this might seem a little bit odd to put in here, but take a break after you write a big piece of content. It's actually such a strenuous process. It's such a creative process, and you're kind of forcing yourself to be creative, which is really, really tough on your brain. And you don't want to kind of wear yourself out and start disliking creating the content. You always want to have a really good sense of accomplishment afterwards. And I always think giving yourself a little break afterwards and promising yourself a little break afterwards really kind of like adds to that good feeling about creating content. It's not like, oh, I'm creating content and then I have to do this and then this and then this, and it's so hard. The content takes so long to create. It's not that. It's I'm creating content and then I get to take a 15-minute break. I'll watch my show for a little while. I'll have a coffee. I'll go for a walk, get some fresh air, whatever it is. You'll look forward to just being able to kind of sit in your accomplishment. Creating content isn't easy. Enjoy it and reward yourself a little bit. And also, stay inspired. I really like quotes. You might have noticed if you follow me on any of my accounts or kind of on Google Plus, I put a lot up there, but they just really keep me inspired and they keep me productive. Yeah, I like Seth Godin. He always has some good quotes. So there's no shortage of remarkable ideas. What's missing is the will to execute them. And that kind of makes me want to be that will. I want to have that will to execute them. I want the good ideas to be in the forefront of everyone's mind, and I want to be responsible for them. So I like looking at quotes to inspire me. And especially if you're writing as well, quotes are a really good kind of way to kind of stay inspired literary wise. So the next aspect of getting people to read your blog is social, and more social. So this is about networking. Now that we're on the internet, for some reason we don't think networking exists. It does. It's the same thing. It's just we're doing it on the internet. So this is all about just being with people. So we know our allies, we know our audience, we know our competitors. Let's talk with them. Let's have conversations. It's the whole point of social media, is to engage and interact. So I don't know why we're not treating social media more like a conversation. It's not something that we need to approach in a really super business-like style. It's meant to be fun. People are on those platforms to have conversations. They're not on it to be marketed to. They're not on it for you to shove content down their throat all the time. They're on it for conversations. So if you're marketing on it, that's fine. It's your business. It's what you want to do. But you're also wanting to engage people in those conversations because that's what they want to do. And you're always trying to give people what they want, and they want to talk. So content distribution. Once you publish your article or your post, you share it. Once you share it, people will start engaging with it. People will start liking it and favoriting it and sharing it as well, and just being awesome, and yeah, and talking about it. And so engage with them. That's really, really important. I love the engagement part. It's my favorite part. Have conversations with people and get to know them. Then you'll measure it, how successful it is. And if it's doing well, repurpose it. Do something else with it. Make it more accessible somehow. Make it more accessible to a different type of person somehow. For example, we had, what blog was it? Oh yeah, the social media, which social media platform is best for your small business? And it was doing really well. And I just kind of was looking through it one day, and I thought, this is very much something that could be a visual piece of content. We're talking about social media, and we're talking about which one's best for your business, and it doesn't really need to be a block of text. Well, that's fine, but we're talking about trying to save people time by not spending all their time on different social media platforms. How can I save people time with this blog? And I thought, a SlideShare. A SlideShare is much easier to and faster to run through than a blog post. So I made that into a SlideShare, and that did really, really well. Super happy with that. And we've done that a few times where I've seen that a blog's doing really well, but maybe we're not getting a lot of signups. How do I get people to sign up? Oh, I create this kind of content. I do content upgrade on whatever it is. But definitely measure and then repurpose. And with the cycle here, as you go down the cycle, so publishing is an immediate thing. Sharing is something that happens within a few minutes to a few days afterwards. Engaging happens within a few minutes to a few weeks afterwards. Measuring happens within a few days and a few months afterwards. And repurposing can happen within a few days and a good few months, even up to a year afterwards. So as you go through the cycle, it actually, the time gets a little bit longer as well, which I think is important to remember, that this cycle doesn't all happen within an hour. It is a very, very long continuous cycle that will happen with all your content. And as you get into the cycle, you'll see that it's a very organic process, but don't skip any of these things. I see a lot of people skip the repurpose. They don't think of how to change a really successful piece of content into something else. Measuring, so many people don't measure the success of their content marketing strategies. Bad idea. If you're not doing well, you need to change it. So definitely measure it. Okay, and the next thing we're going to talk about is content curation. So it's not just about, it's not just about sharing your own stuff. So I like to think of social media as a conversation. You're a really, really awful conversationalist if you're just talking about yourself. That's the end of the story. You want to be a good conversationalist. You want to be good on social media. So that means you can't just talk about yourself, no matter how much you want to. But no, and curation is fun. I love reading articles about that other people have written that I might not have thought about, or maybe aren't super directly connected with content marketing, but I think that my audience would be interested in this too. So I find that information and I will just either bookmark it. If you're on Feedly, I will tag it with the Spokal tag, and then I can go back into our editorial calendar and curate it there. If I just find it on a random blog that I'm reading, I might just copy and paste it and again put it into the editorial calendar. And then you curate it. So that's just when you add your own comment to it and you share it. And it looks like this. So your comment is here, agreed. The link to the article is here. The post title is here. And then where you got the post from is here. This doesn't always have to be like such a rigid template, but generally you tend to have a comment, a link, a post title, and the via source in your sharing or in your content curation. And finally, and most importantly, leave a comment on everything. This is the most social thing you could do that's not directly on social media, I guess, but on blogs, on shares, on posts, on YouTube, on articles, on links, on webinars, quizzes, surveys. Get your name out there. Get talking with people. If they're not an influencer, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Just share, just open up conversations, get to know people. This is getting to know your audience. This is getting to know influencers. This is sharing your content. This is marketing done right. So it's just leaving a comment on everything. When you first start, I purposely, for 2 days, I left a comment on everything. Like, it was beyond ridiculous. But after that, I calmed down and I didn't leave a comment on absolutely everything. If something, obviously sometimes comments are disabled, but if something wasn't particularly interesting for me, I would stop leaving comments on it. But the 2 days that I spent on commenting on everything really got me into a habit of just, when I liked something, something would go on in my head and I would say, okay, leave a comment. So I would suggest for like a few days just commenting on absolutely everything and get into that habit. And the final thing is organization. I'm kind of weird for always getting people to put organization as a top priority when it comes to content creation, but it's really, really important. And I kind of can't highlight enough how important it is to productivity, but it is, and it's not just about having a tidy desk, it's the habit of creating strict schedules and deadlines and utilizing organization tools. There's so many out there. Organizing your folders, organizing your bookmarks, organizing your passwords, whatever it is. It's all about getting organized so that you're not wasting time, you're not getting frustrated, and your days are going as smoothly as they possibly can. So this is what my schedule looks like. This is a template. You can actually download this on our Spokal website with the A to Z online marketing terms PDF. We send you a few templates and it looks nicer than this. It's all fancy and stuff. I'm not fancy. I don't need something fancy, but I've made a really nice one for everybody else. And this is just generally what it looks like. I always post on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that's why they're there. And then I can put the dates and stuff like that. And at the start of every month or at the end of every month for the next month, depending on how my schedule is going and where the start and end lands that month, I will spend about, I was spending about 5 hours doing this. I think I spent 5 hours this month. I have it written down somewhere because it's a part of a blog post I want to write, but I spend a lot of time filling this in for the next month. And it really, really pays off because I have a really strict schedule that I follow, and I'm never stuck for content and writing content. So you can download that there. And this is the deadline I set for myself. So Mondays I write, Tuesdays I do outreach, Wednesdays I write, Thursdays I do outreach, and Friday is big content. All that big content is just content that's not a blog post. So yeah, like a webinar, say, guest blogging. So this is just an example and super easy for you to create just in a table on Word. Speaking of Word, learn to love Word and Excel. They're really, really important, and get really good at them. Learn to use the shortcuts and the short keys and things like that, because it will save you a lot of time. So Control A is to select all, Control C is to copy, Control V is to paste, and Control X is to cut, I think. I don't know. My hands do it. I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, learn all these shortcuts because it's super useful for you guys, just to save time and keep it productive. And obviously, folders and subfolders. If you read any of my blogs, you'll know I'm a little bit of a fanatic. I used to do a bit of admin work, and this is where I learned how to be super organized with this kind of stuff, because otherwise I got shouted at a lot. So yeah, so you have your folders, and then you'll have subfolders. So if I go into blogs, these are all my blogs, and in each blog I will have images and the actual blog itself. And I do the same with bookmarks. So I have image sources, Spokal, marketing, blogs, professional. And if I go inside of those, I have outreach, webinar, all the stuff I need to create webinars and stuff like that. So get that sorted, and do spend a little bit of time doing it. It's actually not a waste of time. You'll save a lot more in the long run. So, and obviously the tools that I love and I can't live without are Evernote over here, and this is just great when I'm out and about. And a lot of time if I'm commuting, I'll be like, oh, I can just do a little bit of work while I'm on the train, or I'm reading a bit of content. I'm like, oh, I love this, so I'll just save it onto Evernote, and then when I'm connected to the internet, it syncs up with my Evernote on my computer, so I have it there, and then I don't have to email myself things and stuff like that. So I really like that. And then my Moleskine, I don't know how to say that. Yeah, just use it to stay organized and write everything in and not forget anything, especially if you're writing your own content or you're working at home. It's super great to just keep yourself on track with. So if there's 4 key takeaways that I want you to leave with today, it's get to know people that will likely be reading and sharing your content. Write fearlessly, because you'll be revising over and over again and again. That shouldn't say again, sorry. And only what you're ready to put out will go out. Get organized. You'll be a lot more productive and less stressed. And don't just sell your own content, sell advice and help. Show people that it's not all about you by curating and commenting on other content. Okay, so that's the end of the blog. So I'm going to ask you guys if you have any questions.